G'day guys, this is Tia and welcome back to another Fallout 76 build video. Today we are finally hopping onto and showcasing the perfected bloodied pistol run and gun build called the Gunslinger. This has been a long time coming and sorely needed. For those that are returning viewers or want to move along to certain parts of the video, the timestamps are on the screen and in the description, alongside the written build guide via the Nukes and Dragons website. Check that out alongside the video as it is a very helpful tool. Now before we jump into the build, let's talk about it a little bit first, so you know what you're getting into. Straight off the bat, you guys know pistols are not the meta, and they aren't the most powerful builds in the game at all, not even by a long shot. This is why I haven't updated this build in a little over 4 years, but I figure I owe it to you guys to do what I can and make it stand out. Now with that being said, pistol builds are fun and unique in their own ways. But like I said, we aren't going to be the MVP of the public event or the boss event by any stretch of the imagination. I just want you guys to fully accept and know that going forward into the build video. I've given a warning and covered what the build can't do. Now let's get into what it can do for us. The Gunslinger build will have the maximum amount of damage possible for our chosen weapon type, single fire pistols. We will also have a maximum AP regeneration speed, allowing us to really live that cowboy quick draw lifestyle vicariously through VATS. And to top it all off, we will be able to dish out a critical shot as often as possible, every second shot in VATS. The min-max objective for this build is run and gun survivability, AP regeneration, damage output, and maximum VATS efficiency and usage. So with that said, let's get into it. As with any build, we have to start off with the special stats. Your special is the foundation of which the whole build relies on. If you get it wrong here, then you'll get it wrong later on in the build. Also, I want you guys to be aware that in this build, to fully utilize it like I do to its fullest potential, I am going to ask you guys to fully level up 2 legendary special cards to give us 10 more special points to make use of in this build. So yeah, this build makes use of 2 legendary special cards fully maxed out. Make sure you have that. Anyway, to make the Gunslinger build at absolute base special stat before any buffs or alterations or legendary specials come into play, your special should be the following: 5 strength, 1 perception, 10 endurance, 7 charisma, 8 intelligence, 15 agility, and 10 luck. Like I said, these should be your absolute base and default special stats on the character. Now you might have noticed that perception is looking a little bit weak here at the start at 1. That's because we haven't taken into consideration our legendary special cards yet, so let's do that now. So the 2 that we will be using on this build are legendary perception and legendary luck. Taking both of those into consideration, we'll raise perception to 6 and luck to 15. It's super important that you max out these cards to get full use of our regular perk cards in both of these special lines. Obviously, if you don't have either of these maxed out at the moment, then feel free to drop a few points from endurance or strength or whatever you want, put them into perception so you get the perks that you need for this build. But like I said at the start guys, this is an end game build, so I'm expecting you guys to have these legendary perks maxed out to make use of this build in its entirety. But as always, we will dive into that more during the legendary perks section, so stay tuned. Obviously, you could utilize different special cards if you'd like to, be that endurance or agility for example. Just make sure you compensate for this change and correct your base special stats to match what I have in this build video with what you choose to use. Now from there, once everything is said and done, once you have fully maxed out your special legendary cards, once you have full unyielding active, once you're at full hunger and thirst and are benefiting from everything this build has to offer, like being on a team with Empath for example, then your special stats should be as follows: 16 strength, 33 perception, 14 endurance, 25 charisma, 22 intelligence, 41 agility, and 34 luck. These are what your special stats should be looking like once you benefit from everything the build has to offer, like I mentioned before. We have a high focus on perception, agility, and luck, as those are directly combat related to our character and our build. High perception for higher VATS accuracy, higher agility for more AP to spend in VATS, and higher luck to obviously get us closer to that crit every second shot threshold that we want to sit at. Like I said before, we do need to make sure we have at least 33 luck at all times, which is why I've made sure that we do have an extra point of luck just in case we do contract a disease or something else that will reduce our luck by 1. Now we also do have a secondary focus on our endurance, as we are not going to be making full use of stealth in the base version of this build. We are a run and gun pistol build after all. Alright, now let's have a look at the perk setup for the Gunslinger build. Perks are the most important aspect of your build. It's important that you pick your perks correctly in any build, as it will make or break your performance. But even more so for a pistol build, as you'll soon see. Unfortunately, pistols cannot make full use of their agility skill tree because the weapon damage perks are located there, and there are just so many useful perks to have in agility. So that means we have to make a choice. Do we sacrifice a slight weapon damage boost, or sacrifice useful agility perk cards? I'll be touching on that when the time comes, and I'll be giving you guys lots of options for how you may want to set up your agility tree with the pistol build. With that being said, let's get into the perks. As I said before, this is a run and gun, so we will be focusing a little bit more on damage mitigation. I will show a stealth variant of this build in a second, and I will show a different setup for the agility, as the perk section in the agility skill tree is very weird for the pistol build. So stick around and I'll show other options for what you can do in agility if what you see right here doesn't tickle your fancy. Anyway, in strength we have max rank of Bandolier. This will make all of our chosen weapon ammunition weigh 90% less. We're going to be mainly using revolvers and maybe 10mm pistols on this build. However, if that doesn't apply to you, if you'd prefer to use energy pistols on this build, then you're more than welcome to drop Bandolier and use those 2 points elsewhere in the build. Next up, we will be taking Blocker, take 45% less damage for all of our opponent's melee attacks. Immensely useful for tanking on this build. This perk is pretty much a given for any build that wants to withstand damage. Blocker is insanely helpful. Next in Perception, we do have max rank of Tank Killer. This is going to apply for all of our pistols, giving us 36% armor penetration and a 9% chance to stagger. We'll take that, that's pretty useful. The armor penetration alone is going to increase our damage massively with our pistols, so make sure you rock Tank Killer at max rank. Next we've got max rank of Concentrated Fire, very useful perk for VATS orientated build. Obviously, just so we can target the weak spot, which is usually the head, so we can do bonus damage to them. And also it gains accuracy as we fire at the enemy. And because we are using single action, single fire pistols on this build, this will ramp up pretty quickly. I'm pretty sure we get like 20% incremental increases per shot. So if it's a low percent to aim for the head when you first enter VATS, just keep firing. You might whiff the first 2 or 3 shots and then it'll be at 95% from there. Massive boost, we're going to take this perk. From there, in Endurance, we're going to be taking max rank of Life Giver. This will give us 45 HP to work with, plus the extra 20 HP points it takes to actually put this perk in. So you think about it, it's 65 points of HP. And a quick explanation here, a lot of new players have been asking why I rock Life Giver in all of my builds when it's more focused on tanking damage, even though they're bloodied. So bloodied builds, obviously we only have less than 20% of our total health bar to work with, as 80% of it or more is usually full of radiation. So taking Life Giver or anything else that increases our total maximum HP will just give us a little bit more wiggle room in that little 20% health that we have to work with. So if you take into account the extra 4 points we need in Endurance, which each point gives us 5 HP, the 65 points we get for slotting in Life Giver, this will basically give us an extra 13 HP to work with when we're below 20% HP, and that can make a massive difference when you're fighting enemies. So just having more HP to work with while we are lower health is always beneficial. Next up we've got Ghoulish. I've just done a video on why you should rock this as a low health bloodied build, since that also was being questioned. This is very helpful in a lot of situations in the game. Basically, a large majority of all enemies in the game, all mutated creatures, have a radiation subcomponent to their melee strikes, or maybe they're using rad weapons. Whatever the case may be, maybe you're just in an environment that deals radiation damage, like you're near a nuke zone, or maybe you're standing in some water. I don't know, there might be rads nearby. It's the wasteland after all. And whenever that does happen, you're going to heal. It's going to act as a little mini stim-pack and heal you a percentage of the rads that you get given. It doesn't touch your radiation bar, your radiation remains unchanged. I'm not saying to specifically use rad-inducing items like glowing blood or toxic goo to make use of this. It's just an extra thing to add to your arsenal of survivability. You get healed from things that hurt you. Next up we have Fireproof. Massively useful on all builds. You should be rocking Fireproof no matter what you're doing. Take 45% less damage from all explosions and flame attacks. Without this, you will most likely get caught off guard and killed very easily by random grenades, explosions from missile launchers, or maybe the sonic breath attacks from the Scorch Beasts. So chuck on Fireproof. Next up in Charisma, we will be rocking Strange in Numbers. Incredibly useful for us, incredibly useful for all builds no matter what you're doing. It makes all of our mutations 25% stronger, and we should always be on a team in this game. You get so many benefits for being on a team, and this is one of them. Next, we will be rocking max rank of Suppressor and Tenderizer. I'm going to cover both these in tandem. Suppressor makes our enemy do 30% less damage after we attack it for 2 seconds, and Tenderizer makes us do 10% more damage to the enemy for 10 seconds after we attack them. Both these in tandem are just great. You do more damage and you take less damage to whatever you're firing at. Also, that applies for all of your teammates or other players in the vicinity. So they can benefit from you rocking these perks, as it does apply to them. If they're shooting your teammates take 30% less damage, and your teammates can do 10% more damage to them as well. Very useful perks. I highly recommend using them both in tandem if your goal is to tank damage. Next up in intelligence, we have max rank of Nerd Rage. It wouldn't be a bloodied build if you're not using Nerd Rage. While we're below 20% health, which is the ideal amount of health to be below while you're bloodied, you do 20% more damage, and you have 40 more damage resistance. We'll take that. A little bit more tanky. Nice. Won't be too noticeable, but we'll take it. And you also regenerate your AP 15% faster. That we will notice. That's very useful. A lot of synergizing with this perk with their build. It's incredibly stacked and incredibly beneficial. From there, we will also be rocking max rank of Demolition Expert. Obviously, you can drop this if you don't plan on using the weapons with the exploding secondary star effect. I'll go over that more in the weapons section, but I am on this build. Most of my revolvers and pistols have the exploding secondary effect to just make my single fire revolvers and single action pistols deal a lot more oomph and area damage to all of my enemies around it. And with this perk, I do an extra 60% explosive AoE damage on top of that. So it's very useful for me if you do plan on using that explosive second star effect on your weapons. Alright, now the fun part, agility. So you're pretty limited in here because all of the Gunslinger weapon cards are in agility. I would much prefer if they got moved to perception. That way we can fully utilize the agility skill tree and use a lot more of these more useful perks at max rank. Unfortunately, we do have to make some sacrifices. This is what I've chosen for default. As you can see here, I'll explain it in a second and I'll explain alternatives later on, but let's go over it. Max rank of Action Boy, just so we can regenerate AP 45% faster. Incredibly useful so that we can get back into VATS straight away or as fast as we possibly can and utilize our most powerful asset, that being critical shots. Being able to dish out a critical shot every second shot is very powerful and is a massive boost to this build. So Action Boy is going to help us just do that more often. From there, I've taken rank 1 of all 3 of the Gunslinger perks: Master, Regular, and Expert. Now I've done this because just rank 1 will give you 10% damage. If I had have just fully maxed it out, I would only get 15 and 20 added on. So 20 extra damage if I max out just one of those perks versus 30% extra damage if I just take rank 1. So that's 10% there, 10 there, and 10 right there. So it is optimal to do it this way if you would like to get more damage just out of pistols. Again, I'll show another variation soon. Next up, we've got rank 1 of Gun Fu. Very useful perk. It's going to give us that VAT swap ability and make us do 10% damage to our next target. The reason I haven't maxed it out is because you don't see the opportunities very often to get to that second and third enemy while in VATS. A lot of the time, VATS will just kick you out of VATS when you're reloading, or maybe a slight little bit of debris will get in the way and mess up your combo. So it's actually quite rare to get to that third target to get that 60% damage boost for all your next VATS kills. What's not rare is killing enemies. So you have max rank of Adrenaline on this build. Every kill you get gives you a 10% boost. After 6 kills, you've got 60%. So that's basically active all the time, 24/7, since it refreshes with every kill we get. Basically for the entirety of you clearing out a dungeon, clearing out Westec, a cave, one little area of the woods, I don't know, wherever you're at, this will always be active. That 60% boost will always be active if you're quick enough. And from there, like I've said, we are doing a run and gun playstyle. We're going to need Dodgy so that we can actually stay alive. Dodgy is very useful. It gives us another 30% damage mitigation effect for the cost of 30 action points per hit. Now, don't stress. I know we're using VATS for this build. That doesn't matter too much. There is a cooldown in between shots, and because we regenerate our action points so fast, we've got such a large AP refill rate, it doesn't even matter. You'll take a shot, it'll take 30 AP points away from you, and then it will refresh straight back up. It doesn't matter. The negative of Dodgy doesn't matter. On to luck, we've got max rank of Bloody Mess, 15% extra damage, we're going to take that. It'll also help soften the blow for missing out on all of these extra damage boosts for not maxing out Gunslinger because of the location of these perks. So yeah, 15% extra damage, we'll take that on the pistol build. We need it. Next up, we've got rank 1 of Grim Reaper Sprint. This will give us a 15% chance to restore all action points anytime we get a kill. Now, because of how often we kill things, you'll see this proc actually quite often. And when it does proc, you'll be pretty happy that you've slotted it in. From there, we've got max rank of Better Criticals, making our critical shots do 100% more damage. Incredible synergization with the build. We dish out a critical shot every second shot. And now they do 100% more damage than they would have. We're going to be taking max rank of Serendipity next. While we're below 30% health, which we should be, below 20% health, so this will always be active, we get a 45% chance to avoid all damage. Just straight up, you don't take damage when this activates. Very useful survivability perk, every bloody build should be rocking this. From there, we've got max rank of Starch Genes, just so that we will never mutate. We get to keep our chosen mutations, as for all of my min-max builds, we only want to take certain mutations because we're not rocking Class Freak. So the ones we want are only combat-related ones that actually benefit the build as a whole. So yeah, take Starch Genes. And then finally, we have max rank of Critical Savvy. This, in combination with having 33 luck, will let you shoot off a critical shot every second shot. This plus 33 luck is all you need for that to happen. This perk makes your critical hits consume 55% of the critical meter, so it's still filled up about halfway, and you can get it back up to full with the next shot. Very useful, amazing for the build. So there we have it guys, the perk cards for the Gunslinger build. Setting your pistol build up this way will net you the best performance in my opinion, and I think it is the ideal setup if you are trying to min-max for damage and AP regeneration while running and gunning around the wasteland. But there are a few other alternative ways to play, which I'll go into now for you guys if you're interested. Alright, let's check out the alternative perk cards. First up, I'm going to show you guys how to turn this build into a more stealth-orientated version. You can put this in your special loadouts like I have. I've got T for tanking and S for stealth. Switch between them as you wish. The differences here is I've taken out max rank of blocker, I've taken out ghoulish, I've taken out suppressor, I've taken out dodgy, action boy, and rank 1 of gun fu, and I've taken out serendipity. In its place, I've added in revenant and rejuvenated, just to help out if I do get detected and downed, a player revives me, boom, 50% more damage. I'll take that. And also a little bit more AP regen and a little bit more health to work with in case we do get detected. It's just a little bit more beneficial. However, you do have to be fully hydrated and fully hungered. I've also put in max rank of field surgeon and first aid, just in case we do get detected. The Stimpak will be our saving grace, and the Stimpaks will be a lot more powerful, and they'll keep your health topped up until you can safely relocate and get stealth and get back in caution again. As I've always explained, field surgeon and first aid are very beneficial on stealth builds. They are our saving graces if we do get detected. Now, the sneak version of the pistol build looks like this, sadly, because the pistol perks are in here, so it's taking up space that I would have used for maybe Action Boy or rank 1 of Gun Fu to stay in. Taking max rank of Covert Operative to do 50% more sneak damage, max rank of Sneak to just make sneaking a lot easier. However, you could probably take this out if your stealth is already way up there and you've got enough agility. We're going to be taking Escape Artist. This one's very useful. It gives you a 100% muffled effect and makes it so you can just run away, crouch down if you do get detected, and you'll be back in caution more than likely. Replacing Serendipity is Quick Hands, just because most pistols like revolvers or plasma pistols or whatever you're using have insanely low magazines and clips. So having Quick Hands to just instantly refill that every now and again is really nice, makes the build feel a lot less sluggish. Another variant is maybe you don't want to use single fire pistols, maybe you want to use automatic. Feel free to replace them with Gorilla instead of Gunslinger. So another variation of using the agility skill tree for pistol builds is maybe you want to max out all of the weapon damage cards. You're more than welcome to do that, chuck those in, all 3 of them, whether it's Gunslinger or Gorilla. Like so. Maybe you want to do this just to get more static damage, I don't know. Doing this though will give you a lot less points to work with for the other useful perks. Doing it this way, you will have to utilize those extra 2 points with just rank 2 of Action Boy or rank 2 of Adrenaline. Or maybe you could bring Dodgy down to rank 2 and then chuck in max rank of either Action Boy or rank 3 of Adrenaline. You've just got to figure it out on your own what works best for you for the pistol builds. Like I said before, the way I've done it, this way does appear to net me the most damage output, while also giving me access to max rank of all of these useful agility perk cards. Feel free to leave comments explaining how you prefer to use the agility tree for pistol builds, as it is an ever-changing meta. There's no correct way to do it for agility because it's just so stacked with all of these useful perks and then the damage cards on top of it. Again, I would much prefer if all of these Gunslinger and Gorilla perk cards were moved over to Perception. It would make this type of build a lot easier for us. And then from there, another alternative way to play is maybe you don't want to be on a team for whatever reason. That's fine. Take out Suppressor and Stranger Numbers, slot in Lone Wanderer. I don't recommend you do this because being on a team is just so amazing and you get so many benefits, but if you do, there you go. And then finally, the last alternative way I'm going to recommend how to play is maybe you don't want to use the Demolition Expert perk card, you don't want to use the explosive second star effects on your revolvers or pistols, or any ballistic weapon if you are using them. If that's the case, feel free to take this perk out and use those 5 perk points anywhere else in the build. Maybe you could use those 5 perk points to put 2 into Charisma, slotting in Field Surgeon, and then 3 in Intelligence, slotting in max rank of First Aid, just making you a little bit more tanky when you do heal. Alright guys, those were the alternative perk cards done. If you would rather play solo, if you'd rather play with a bit more stealthy options, if you want to utilize automatic pistols instead, or maybe if you'd simply want another way to make use of the cluttered agility tree, I got you covered there. Hopefully some of those help you out. Now let's get into the legendary perk cards of the build. Alright guys, let's get into the legendary perk cards. First up, we've got Far-Flung Fireworks. Very useful perk card for dealing extra damage to a large group of enemies, or maybe it will help finish off a tougher enemy, if it does proc. Now this also does get boosted with your damage effects, as well as Demolition Expert, or Grenadier if you do choose to use Grenadier on this build for whatever reason. Now I've had a lot of situations where this perk has just straight up procced and killed a group of enemies in a room. That alone makes it worth it. You save bullets, and you get a large explosion dealing massive amounts of area damage. It is just simply a 20% chance to deal a massive amount of damage in an AoE for enemies around your chosen target. Very useful perk, chuck on Far-Flung Fireworks for that extra procced damage. From there, let's talk about the legendary special perk cards. We've got max rank of Perception and max rank of Luck, as I've already spoken about at the start of this video. Taking both of these will give us 10 more perk points to utilize in our main build, which we have made good use of. Like I said before at the start, if you don't have max rank of Perception already, then you can alter your starting special stats so that you can have 6 Perception by default and then fiddle around with it to make adjustments as you need. I spec'd into Legendary Perception, so I reduced my base Perception to account for that, so I can use those 5 perk points in the build elsewhere. For Legendary Luck, the reason I always choose Luck for my ranged builds is just so I can get to that 33 threshold much easier. So yeah, 5 extra points to work with in the build from Luck and 5 extra points to work with for Perception, plus it helps me get to 33 Luck a lot easier. Take both of them, you'll need it for this build. Again, you can utilize a different legendary special card, Endurance, Charisma, Intelligence, whatever. Just make sure you adjust your special stats to match what I have at the start of the video if you do have a different one. From there, we're taking max rank of taking one for the team. This will make enemies take 40% more damage once they attack us if we're on a team. Very useful. Everyone should be rocking this for events, daily ops, expeditions, whatever. Everyone should be in a team anyway. So if you're in a team and rocking this, you're helping everyone around you and you're helping yourself, since you can be in a team on your own by yourself and have this still work for you. We've also got follow through on. This is the sneak version of that perk card basically. We're going to be dealing 40% more ranged sneak damage to all targets that we shoot for 10 seconds. Obviously, we will only be using this and making use of this when we choose to stealth, whether that's with our silenced pipe revolver, or our silenced 10mm pistol, or our silenced Crusader pistols. If you choose to go the sneak route, then this perk will be very beneficial for you. If you choose to not sneak at all, and maybe you don't want to sneak at all and you want to stick to this build's bread and butter, being run and gun and tanking, then feel free to swap out follow through for something else, preferably another perk card of these. Go ahead and max one of them out in place of follow through and you can have a free 5 extra perk card points to utilize elsewhere in the build. And then finally, we're going to be taking Funky Duds. Very useful for all of our bloodied builds. As I always say, The bane of all Bloody builds' existence is damage over time. Mainly that is poison damage over time. Poison's very common in the Wasteland, whereas fire is not so common. But if you do know that you're going to be taking some fire damage in an event or something, you can plan for that and swap these two out between Funky Duds and Sizzling Style. This will just help mitigate random deaths to those damage over time effects if you weren't paying attention. So yeah, these are the legendary perk cards for the pistol build. Enjoy and customize it if you'd like to have a different option for yourself. So there we are. All perk cards, both regular and alternative and legendary, have been shown for the Gunslinger build. Everything has been explained in detail about why we have chosen what we have. Now with all that said and out of the way, let's move on to mutations. Picking the right mutations that directly synergize with the build is very important. Basically because we have chosen only mutations that benefit the build's goals and min-max objectives, we have no need to waste 3 perk points towards Class Freak, as the inherent negatives that come with our chosen mutations don't actually matter or negatively impact us whatsoever, since they are aspects of the build we are not prioritizing or utilizing. Therefore, we do not need to spend the points on Class Freak, and we can better use those 3 perk points elsewhere in the build. Min-maxing is when you leave the stats that are least mechanically impactful to your character at the most minimal levels so that you have the most leeway in maxing out the more mechanically impactful stats. For example, perception, agility, and luck, we want those at the maximum, whereas strength, endurance, intelligence, we don't care about those since those aspects don't impact our combat effectiveness. I hope that makes sense. Also, keep in mind guys that all of the listed benefits are going to be boosted by stranger numbers by 25%, another reason to join teams in the game. Alright guys, let's look at the mutations. Obviously for all of our bloody builds we're going to be taking Adrenal Reaction. This is like a little mini bloodied effect. It's going to increase our weapon damage as our HP gets lowered. Good synergization, we tack that onto all of our low health builds. We're also going to be taking Bird Bones for the increase in agility, making us more stealthy if we choose to go that route, and just giving us more AP to work with for VATs. Also, the reduced fall speed is nice. Eagle Eyes is going to be taken because we are a ranged combat build. We will be using criticals every second shot, so making them do 50% more damage is obviously very useful. Plus the 4 perception, going to make our shots a lot more accurate in VATs as well. Herbivore is taken so we can ×2 our benefits from all of our herbivore food buffs and dishes. If we are a ranged combatant, we're always going to be taking herbivore, since all of those crit damage boosts are from herbivore, veggie, and fruit meals. Herd mentality is taken because we should always be on a team. I'm going to be rocking this on every single build from now on. There's no reason not to take it. It just permanently gives you +3 to all of your special due to stranger numbers. We're always going to be on a team, so we're always going to be benefiting from it. Next, we're going to be taking Marsupial. That's a staple in this game. Everyone rocks Marsupial. It's very helpful. You jump up onto higher ground. Very great tactical advantage to have. On top of that, we get +20 to our carry weight. We get to carry more stuff. Awesome, great bonus, great mutation to have. From there, we're going to be taking Plague Walker. This will give us a little poison aura around our character every time we get a disease. Now, you can't exactly prevent yourself from getting diseases 100% in this game. It's going to happen whether you like it or not at some random point in the game when you're playing. So when it does happen, we're going to make that work in our benefit, and we will slightly damage enemies when they're around us. And there's no inherent negative to Plague Walker. The only quote-unquote negative is the fact that you have to have diseases for it to work. But like I said, you're going to get diseases anyway. It's going to happen, so let's make that work in our benefit. And finally, we have Speed Demon. This simply just increases our movement speed and reload speed by 20%, while draining our hunger and thirst 50% more. Being able to reload faster is incredibly good for this build since we have such low magazines for our pistols, and moving out at maximum speed is going to help you in a lot of situations as well. So those were the mutations chosen for the Gunslinger build. Pretty standard stuff for a ranged combatant. Everything is chosen to benefit the build's playstyle, and we have nothing that we don't need. But as with anything in this build, you're more than welcome to change it up and add or remove whatever mutations you want. These are just what I recommend for the min-max build. Now let's get into the most important item in your inventory, your weapons. Obviously, as a Gunslinger pistol build, our main focus will be single fire pistols, such as 44 pistols, Western revolvers, Gauss pistols, the Black Powder pistol, the Crusader pistol, or the single fire 10mm pistol. Hell, you could even make use of energy pistols such as the Plasma pistol, Alien Blaster, or Laser pistol on this build. However, stay tuned, I'm going to have a modified version of this build specifically that uses energy pistols, so keep an eye out for that. Additionally, if you'd rather use automatic pistols, then switch to that alternative variant of the build, like I suggested previously. Anyways, this build is best suited for loud and proud one-shot, one-kill pistols. I mainly stick to the Western Revolver, Gauss Pistol, and Crusader pistols, as these will net you the highest damage and offer you some nice variations with the build. However, I do find it quite fun to switch to my Plasma Pistol, Alien Blaster, and Black Powder Pistol on occasion, as those are also quite fun to use and are very, very effective. Obviously, if you wish to go like a true gunslinger, then the Western Revolver is the way to go and will match thematically with this build. Or if you're patient enough to charge every shot fully, the Gauss Pistol is the best option for when it comes to per shot damage. Whereas the Crusader is a nice little DPS beast, since it can be fired faster, has more ammo, and retains a pretty respectable damage per shot statistic. Not to mention, if you do wish to stealth around, two of those options can be silence. And hey, if you do want to go the silent approach, but also want to keep the revolver for the gunslinger theme, chuck on a pipe revolver. You can silence these ones. And they're actually quite powerful. Now, as for legendary effects on our chosen weapons, for all single fire pistols, you'll want the same here. Obviously, for the first star effect, we are a bloody build, so we will want the bloodied prefixed effect, synergizing with us, giving us more damage for being low health. As for the second star, there's only two viable options. Firstly, I'd recommend the bullets exploding effect for every single fire pistol and revolver that is ballistic, as this will work really well with the slow fire nature of the weapons. The explosive bullets will increase the damage per shot we do substantially, since it is 20% of our weapon's damage. Also, it doesn't hurt that part of that damage can be spread out in a little AoE to hurt other enemies around the target. The second option would be the 50% extra critical damage effect. Since our build can crit every second shot, this option is just as good. Now, I would only ever recommend these two effects for single fire pistols. However, if you do wish to use an automatic, then that's the only time I would recommend the faster fire rate effect. For obvious reasons, the faster your weapon's base fire rate, the more you benefit from that percentage-based 25% increase. Then finally, for the third star effect, my best recommendation here is either the 15% faster reload effect or the 25% less action point cost effect. Both are just as viable for pistols. Personally, I'd recommend the 15% faster reload effect, since an overwhelming majority of pistols have small cylinders or magazine capacity and can't have them increase further. So, being able to reload slightly faster is massively beneficial to us. So, you'll be reloading pretty often, and when you do, with this effect, you'll be back in the fight slightly quicker. Whereas if you've got something that is a bit AP cost heavy, like the plasma pistol, then less AP cost on certain weapons can really shine bright, allowing you to optimize your VATS usage even more. So yeah, the absolute gold roll legendary effects for pistols that I'd recommend would either be firstly, the bloodied explosive faster reload rolls, for things like revolvers or standard ballistic pistols. Then secondly, I'd recommend the bloodied 50% crit damage and less VATS cost effect for energy pistols like the plasma and Gauss pistols. Or you could just have these effects on your standard ballistic weapons, as they do perform fantastically as well on this build. Now onto the weapon modifications. Honestly, for all pistols, as long as they have the option, make the receiver primed, and if it has the option, keep it as single fire on this build, as that is the main purpose of the Gunslinger build. Now, if you can't keep up with the flux requirements for the prime ammo, then go for the next most damage forward receiver on your chosen pistol. Most of the time, that will be the powerful receiver. As for the barrels, go with whatever is the longest, and if your pistol gives you the option, make it aligned for less AP cost. For grips, go with forceful pistol grips if your chosen pistol has that option. This will give you the most durability for your weapon and reduce your AP cost a bit more. For sights, if you have the option, utilize a reflex sight for even less AP cost on top. Then for magazines, again if your pistol has the option, go with whatever has the most rounds in the mag, as we will need them. And finally, if your pistol does have a muzzle option, chuck on a silencer just in case you do decide to sneak around and benefit from the stealth version of this build. Now, I know it can be a struggle to find these god roll effects on your pistols of choice. Don't stress too much about the rolls being absolutely perfect, and what I recommend here, you can make do with 1 or 2 star bloodied pistols with imperfect rolls just fine, while you grind for those god rolls. Basically, just don't stress too much about it being perfect and enjoy the grind or enjoy trading up with the community. Now onto armor. Here for this build in particular, we are going to want to aim for something a little bit tankier than normal, as we are going to be running and gunning most of the time, ideally at least. Be that Secret Service or Brotherhood Recon armor. Personally, I've gone with the Secret Service armor. As for legendary effects, for the first star, it's absolutely essential that you have the unyielding prefix. This is what gives us all of the special bonuses to the build, and it's what allows us to reach 33 luck for critting every second shot. It also gives us more of an ability for more run and gun VATS usage. Next, for the second star, we will want to aim for a full set of the powered 5% faster AP regeneration effect. This heavily synergizes with our build, allowing us to do our main VATS function more often and quickly. Then for the third and final star, we will want to aim for a full set of the Sentinels effect, which grants us a chance for you to take 15% less damage while standing still. This will drastically improve our survival chances and our damage mitigation. Now you could go the opposite and get Cavalier, which is the same effect but for sprinting. This will also be viable given the playstyle, but I just find Sentinel to be much more reliable and consistent, since we don't have to rely on constantly having and then using our AP to be sprinting at all times to get the bonus damage mitigation. For Sentinels, we just have to stand still. Easy, reliable, just use that instead. Additionally, if you choose to utilize the stealth variation of this build more prominently than the run and gun version of this build, then having at least one 3rd star effect that grants the harder to detect bonus is not a bad choice either. So yeah, the ideal God Roll armor legendary effects for the Gunslinger are a full set of unyielding, AP refresh and Sentinel armor. Then as for the under armor, we will be choosing the Shielded Raider under armor. The bonus +3 to agility and perception are extremely beneficial for the build, obviously, and that +1 to luck is what we need to push us over to the 33 luck threshold for optimal crit frequency. As for backpacks, I recommend you chuck on the armor plated backpack. This will give us just a little bit of a boost to our damage resistance, making us slightly more tanky. Or additionally, if you're having trouble carrying around your stimp packs or other buffs and chems, then the Chemist backpack is a great option also. This will reduce the weight of all of those chems and stimp packs by 90%. Now let's move on to armor modifications. For the chest, it depends what you're doing. For the most part of your day-to-day gameplay, it is recommended to use the Dense mod to reduce all incoming explosive damage even further. This is very useful for Scorch Beast sonic breath attacks and random grenades or mutated creature ranged attacks you might come across in the Wasteland. However, if you're doing an Earl Williams boss fight, I do recommend the Asbestos Lining mod, as this will prevent all damage from the roof lava pools in that event. Additionally, the third option is just as good. You could just say fuck it and get the jetpack and roleplay a Jango Fett type of bounty hunter, becoming a run, gun, jetpack and gunslinger. As for the arm and leg modifications, there's only one mod to recommend here, that being the ultralight arms and ultralight legs, granting all up 20 extra AP to utilize for the build, which is very, very handy for our run and gun VATS playstyle. Now, with all that said, I know once again it might be tough for you to grind that specific God Roll set of Secret Service armor. Trust me, I know better than anyone, it sucks to grind armor in this game. So in the meantime, while you're building this build and grinding everything out, you're more than welcome to make use of imperfect 1-star unyielding combat armor or leather armor or scout armor, whatever you can get your hands on. Just as long as it is unyielding, it will get the job done and you'll be fine. All that extra stuff like AP regen and sentinels is not really needed unless you want to min-max for the best overclocked performance you possibly can. If that's the case, then enjoy the grind and use what you can until then. Alright, now onto buffs. If you would like to overclock your performance and give yourself a little bit of an edge or boost in some way or another, then look no further than this list. As always, a massive shout out to Duchess and the Buffs and Brews guys for the list. Check them out down below for more visual guides if you haven't already. Now the Gunslinger is like most VATS optimized builds, so it will follow the same trends that I recommend. Let's get started. For food buffs, you're going to want to take the Sweet Tato Stew or maybe Blight Soup to increase your VATS critical damage. You'll take Canned Coffee and Company Tea to increase your AP regeneration, and Soot Flower Tea to give you more AP to work with. And as always, if you're struggling to reach 33 luck, or you want to increase any other special stat for any other reason, feel free to take the corresponding food buff that matches from this list. Basically, keep your focus on the buffs that affect your critical damage and your AP bar for this build. And do keep in mind guys, for the food buffs, we will always be benefiting from the boosted version of all of these food buffs, since we do have the herbivore mutation and we are running stranger numbers. Next for the chems, both variations of Psycho are great and have their uses, however you'll get the most bang for your buck with Overdrive, with a 15% boost to your damage and then 30% boost on top for your critical damage. As for alcohol, obviously it depends if you're running ballistic or energy weapons, take your pick between Bock or Hefe, for that 15% bonus damage to your chosen damage type. Or if you want to push your AP regeneration even further, chuck on a bit of hard lemonade. Now for magazines, again, simply take the magazine that applies to your damage type, Guns and Bullets 3 or Tesla Science 7 for 100% more critical damage for your chosen damage type, be that energy or ballistic. And it's the same for the bobbleheads, energy guns or small guns for an extra 20% damage boost, take your pick. As for camp ally buffs, it's actually quite potent to take the Leo Petrov's Nuka Shine Nuka Inspiration buff. Simply give him a Nuka Shine and you'll regenerate AP 25% faster. And finally for camp objects, play a musical instrument for more AP regeneration on top of that. Or if you're really having trouble reaching 33 luck for whatever reason, then the Fortune Teller will give you a +2 boost. Like I said guys, you can take everything that stacks or only focus on the big buffs that really matter for the build. Either way, taking buffs are a massive way to improve your character's performance and are highly recommended. So that's it guys, the updated Gunslinger build is complete, and I've got to say, I'm pretty happy with it and I'm impressed with the performance. Don't get me wrong, it's no boss killer by any means, and can't compete with the Commando or min-max melee build for example. But min-maxing for damage and this AP regeneration run and gun style of play has been unique and fun. Like I said guys, the point of this build is to min-max for the most damage with our pistols and hyper-optimize our VATS usage and AP regeneration, and we've also gained the ability to shoot a critical every second shot, just making our DPS that much more potent. Pistol builds are fun and they have their niche, but they do have a lot of flaws that all stem mainly from the location of the weapon damage cards, forcing us to make a sacrifice one way or another in the agility skill tree. I do wish that the perk card dilemma was fixed and they were moved to perception, and I do wish that pistols in general would receive a little buff of some sort, be that straight up raw damage increases, or maybe a fire rate increase. Either way, it would make pistol builds feel a little bit more viable in the end game. As I said before, they can't really compete when it gets to that point. Anyways, guys, if you're building this for yourself, feel free to return to the video and make use of the timestamps, as well as the written build version of the build in the description down below. Also, feel free to check out the build playlist to see many more of my creations. I've got a little something for everybody. And with all of that said, it's time to end the video. I hope all of you enjoy using the Gunslinger build. That's going to do it for me. A massive shout out to all of my channel members. You're all legends and thank you for your continued support on the channel. If you like what I do here and you'd like to support me further, then consider becoming a member or check out my merch store. We've got a lot of great designs and benefits, so be sure to check that out in the description. And while you're down there, chuck me a follow on my other social medias and join my Discord. Subscribe if you're new and like the video if you've enjoyed. I've been Tia, and I'll catch us in the next one. Welcome to Valhalla.